This is the input output diagram, and as you can imagine, all components of project plan are input here in all the project documents. We have assumption log, and assumption log is very important in project management because, as I mentioned, your deliverables may depend upon something else. Now that is your assumption, and if that assumption goes wrong, it can really impact your deliverables. So it has to be there in the assumption log, in the risk factors, because your stakeholders need to know. Because ultimately, I mean, there are third party applications you are working with. Those teams are not reporting to you. Even if you follow up with them, at times you may not get the desired response. They may take their own sweet time. So it's very important to go and report it to your stakeholders so that they can follow up with those teams. Basis of estimates basically refers to your estimates. So when you make your estimates, you identify the changes, assumptions, risk factors, all of that. And within those estimates, you put all that information. Estimation, in fact, is a separate document itself. Estimation can be a separate document itself. But yeah, there is no standard template. A lot of companies use different kind of templates. It could be a simple Word document where you may simply export the change request and then add few more columns, add the changes which will be required in your system, and then you simply put the cost. So whatever basis was used to put that cost, let's say you said that a new web service will be needed, will be developed to deliver that change. Now that is the basis for your estimation. And now let's say there's a variance in the requirements. The stakeholders are asking you to develop something else. If you are tracking your project activities, you can simply raise the concern that this was your initial basis for estimation, and if you are deviating from that, how that is going to impact the project. Sometimes, let's say, initially estimates were towards higher side, and now you know that a requirement is not that big, so you may even end up with the positive impact, that is your entire efforts goes down. But in some cases, in fact many cases, you will also get cases when the estimates will go up. So basis of estimation is that, and it is very important as input for monitoring and tracking the project. Cost forecasting is a standard procedure used by many companies in their technology divisions. In fact, in many other divisions, basically it's like having a tolerance limit based on the past experience, that, and you evaluate the performance of current project to determine if this project is going within that range, within that tolerance limit. So it's very important to make sure that we don't overspend on the projects, and this cost forecasting helps in that. An issue log can be anything. I mean, can be the standard defects which are created for a project, and they're also referred as bugs, using tools like HPE, quality control, or Jira, or some other tools, or any assumptions or risk factors. So issue log basically represent that list and who is responsible for that, which are open and the closed, and who is responsible for the open issues. For most of the projects, you will have these defects which are raised as the testing progresses. And so QA will open these defects and they will assign them to the concerned team members. That will be part of your issue log. But not just defect, remember that it can also include other stuff like risk factors. And the usual suspect lesson learned register. Milestone list is basically a list of the important dates. So like if you are following let's say Scrum, you will have the important dates for sprints, various sprints, their start date, end date, important meetings. If you are using waterfall, you will have the design phase. So let's say on XYZ date you will start the BRD preparation, then it will end on another date, then the detailed design, the solution document will be started, it will end then the development will start, and so on. So all of that project is scheduled, is part of your milestone date, and it is used as input in case of tracking, because it's very important to compare these dates and make sure that we stay on the track. If we are already late, and if we were expected to deliver our, let's say, our BRD, then we need to know how we are going to compensate for the lost time. So milestones are very, very important for project tracking. It's all about dates. And quality reports basically addresses the issues, defects. So as I mentioned earlier, in case of issue log, that could be defects and other issues. Here we are specifically talking about the defects, and the report on how to handle them. It could be recommendations. So QA team can work on these reports, create these reports, that there's a pattern about the defect, and what can be done to reduce those kind of defects. So things like that. Risk register basically is a list of threats and opportunities and that have occurred so far in the project. And risk report is basically information on the overall project risk, as well as any information on some specified individual risks. So you can say that your project is green if it is meeting all those deadlines and those milestones. But if it crosses that particular time frame, but is within some kind of range, let's say less than 20% deviation, then maybe it's yellow. But if it crosses that 20% and goes above the tolerance limit, then it could become red. So that is your risk status, the overall risk status. And it can have individual specific items, like I was talking about, that dependencies. So if some dependency is not being delivered, that is part of your risk report. And then we have a similar forecast for schedule like cost, where we use tolerance based on the past performance as input for the current project. And then we have work performance information and agreements, enterprise environmental factors, organizational process assets. And just a note on work performance information. Basically, this deals with all those performance metrics. So let's say if we are talking about funding, now let's say the overall budget is 100K, and we have spent $80,000 out of that, but the project progress is only 20%. So that's low performance. But if we have spent 80,000, but the project progress is 90 or 100%, then that's a good performance. So you have to use these metrics which are very specific to project. Funding is very generic, applicable for all the projects. But let's say you are talking about a website. Now we have website load time. When you visit a website takes certain seconds to load. Let's say google.com, when you type it in your browser, it takes some time to load. Now that is compared with the past performance, expected data, and then you derive a performance. And there the matrix would be page load time. So you come up with these matrix, compare them, and look at the performance. It's very important to compare and find out the performance data, because nowadays most of the corporates are very particular about the performance. In fact, they should be, no matter what you do, even if you deliver the project. But let's say it took 5 times more budget than a standard regular project, it's not worth it. So everything happens within a context, and performance provide that context in terms of comparing our current data. And then we have tools and techniques. So we have expert judgment, data analysis, and within data analysis we have alternative analysis, cost benefit analysis, earned value analysis, root cause analysis, trend analysis, variance analysis. So alternative analysis is basically used to select the corrective actions or a combination of corrective and preventive actions to implement when a deviation occurs. So let's say I took the example of that web service which we were planning to build to implement that project. Now let's say we don't need that web service, so we need to we will take certain actions to prevent any downfall, or corrective actions to to mitigate the risk. So you will perform alternative analysis to find out those preventive and corrective actions. Then we have cost benefit analysis. So if we are doing something, if we are making any change, we will need to perform this cost benefit analysis to know if that change is worth it. So this analysis is done for that. Then we have earned value analysis. It's basically an integrated perspective on scope, schedule, and cost performance. And then we have the root cause analysis. So basically, as the term suggests, you are trying to identify the root cause of the issue. If something happened, what was the trigger? What was the cause of that event? Because if you don't address the root cause, the actual cause of the event, that problem will persist. So it's very important to focus on the root cause. Now, trend analysis is very important nowadays with all that, data analysis, data science. It's very important to understand the existing data and then come up with some kind of forecast based on the performance, based on past results. So trend analysis is basically that. Based on that, you come up with, you try to identify the issues which can happen with the project and try to address them in advance. And variance analysis is basically identifying and analyzing the variance, so between the actual and the expected values. So let's say your estimated cost was $100,000, but you spent 125K. So that is, there's a variance of 25,000. So you will perform variance analysis on that. This helps you in identifying the preventive and corrective actions. Then we have the decision making, and of course the meetings. You have to be meet with the stakeholders. And now meetings are not just face to face. It can happen on the through telephones, Skype. There are so many methods and means. So meetings with your all the stakeholders, and all these kind of techniques like meetings and decision makings, they go together. I mean, you will have a meeting where you will have all the concerned stakeholders, and then you can apply decision making like voting, and to seek their votes and see if something should be promoted to the production or not. And then you have the output in the form of work performance reports. So you will have performance data, change request, project management plan, document update, cost forecast, issue log, lesson learned register, risk register, and schedule forecast. So, and all of these are very important because all of them play vital role in project management. And these are the applications of monitor and control project work. You can see that we are applying it everywhere. Integrated change control, managing team, communication, risk, project management plan, project documents, EEFs, basically external environmental factors, OPAs, organizational process assets. Validate scope, controlling schedule, cost, quality, resources, monitoring communication risk, and controlling the procurement, monitor stakeholder engagement. So you can see that it has got wide array of application. It's very important. As I mentioned earlier, it's one of the core activities you are going to perform as project manager. So that's it for now. In the next video, we'll continue with integrated change control. Thank you.